Hi, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Today we're going to talk about the Fifth Amendment, so stay tuned. I recently saw a question on Quora that essentially boiled down to this. Can a prosecutor force me as a witness to testify in a criminal case? And the answer to that is not only can the prosecutor force you to testify, but the defendant can force you to testify. And indeed, sometimes the defendant can do more than the prosecutor can in terms of getting you to testify. Let's talk about the situation where the prosecutor issues you a subpoena to come and testify in a criminal case. If you don't want to testify, you could certainly talk to the prosecutor and say, hey, look, I just don't want to testify. I don't want to be involved. But the fact of the matter is that he has the power of the court and he can compel you to testify. Several years ago, in a civil case, we filed a subpoena for several people to come give their testimony. And when they refused to give their testimony and show up for their depositions, we got what's called a body attachment. We sent out the sheriff, and the sheriff arrested them, and they had to post bail until such time as they completed their deposition, and then they got their bail money back. So a lot of times you can do that. You can actually force somebody to testify by having them arrested. And then if they come in and they refuse to testify and they simply say, I'm not answering any questions, then the judge can order them committed to jail, and they can be held in jail until they agree to testify. And this happens routinely. In fact, there was a recent ethics case out of, I believe it was Iowa. It was Iowa, where an individual didn't want to testify, and she was held in jail for almost 16 months while her co-defendant's trial was pending. The case against her was dismissed, and she was supposed to testify against her co-defendant, and she didn't. So they kept her in jail for that entire period of time, and then they finally let her out after the case was tried and he was convicted. But that kind of thing does happen, and so you can be compelled to testify in that regard. Now, that makes people upset, and people think that's unfair, but the fact of the matter is the state has a right to get your evidence, and so does the defendant. The defendant has every right to call you as a witness and subpoena you, and if you refuse to testify, a lot of times what happens in that situation is people take the Fifth Amendment. They say, I can't testify about this without violating my Fifth Amendment rights. And so in that situation, what the prosecutor will do is they will issue a grant of immunity. They will say nothing you say will be used against you in a court of law. And in that situation, you no longer have the Fifth Amendment right. You have to testify, and you have to testify truthfully. And if you testify truthfully in a way that indicates you never had any real worry about being implicated in a crime, then there may be repercussions for that because you'll have made false statements to the court. So even though it may be distasteful, even though you don't want to talk about your neighbor and talk about seeing him beat his wife, you don't want to testify to that in court, it's too bad. You're not responsible for the bad things that he did, but you are responsible to tell the truth in a court of law if you are subpoenaed. And so that's just the way the system works. Once you are subpoenaed, you have a right to file a motion to quash the subpoena. That's something you're going to need a lawyer to do because, unfortunately, it's not something that's simple. You have to have a valid reason to quash the subpoena. And if you are successful, then you won't have to testify, but most of the time motions to quash are not granted unless there is some obvious reason why they should be granted. For example, you weren't in the state on that day and couldn't possibly have witnessed anything. So there are ways around testifying, but honestly, for the most part, the only way to get out of it is to hire a lawyer and file a motion to quash. Otherwise, you're probably going to wind up having to go to court and testify. And going to court and telling the truth is not nearly as hard as people think, because it's just doing the right thing. And doing the right thing is what the justice system is all about. So I hope you found this interesting or helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below. If you haven't already, go over here and subscribe to our channel and touch the notification bell so you can be notified every time we release a video on this channel. Once again, thank you very much for watching and have a terrific day. I'll catch you on here next time.